The cloner inside of Cinema 4D is an incredibly powerful tool, and it has been for a number of years. More recently, it's come out with the capability of working with capsules and nodes inside of Cinema 4D. So in a few videos, we're going to be really exploring that and exploring the different workflows you can do with that. Today, we are exploring the stack distribution capsule and how you can work with that inside of Cinema 4D with your cloner. So here we are inside of Cinema 4D. You'll see that we have a number of books here, and they all have their axis in the corner, and we want to make sure that these are lined up in the corner for each one of these. So if you don't already, make sure to turn on your enable axis and move these up, your axis in the corner, and then whenever you're done, turn that off. So that's how you can move your axis to where you'd like it to be. And then if you click this button down here, you can hit Reset Transform, and that will pop that back into the center of our scene here. So the purpose of going through with doing that is that it'll make it easier to work with these inside of a cloner. And also just keeps your scene neat to have your axes neatly lining up. Now what we want to do is drop these into a cloner. So we're going to click on this button here. We now have a cloner in our scene. Let's go ahead and put these within the hierarchy of the cloner. So I'm holding Shift, selecting all of them, dragging and dropping them within the cloner. Now right off the bat, you'll see that these are being cloned in a grid formation. Now this could be helpful for some projects, but today we are exploring capsules. So we're going to switch from this basic mode to advanced. And yes, you can handle this. You can learn this. So when we switch this to advanced, initially you won't see anything happening. So why is that? Well, right now we don't have any selected for distribution. We need to choose what kind of distribution we're doing. You can use the create to start working with nodes. Right now we're going to focus on capsules, so instead I'm going to browse for a capsule. And we're talking about stack distribution today. So these are the different types of distributions you can use in here. Let's go ahead and click on stack distribution. And you'll see that that appears in our scene as a capsule. And if I zoom in here, you'll begin to see our books are stacking. So let's take a look at the different options. When we click on the stack distribution, you'll see a variety of options come up in your attributes manager. Now right here, you'll see your count. This is how many books are we stacking. So you can make this as tall as you'd like. You can control the count here. You can control their offset here, where they start. I'm zooming out a little bit so you can see that better, which book they start cloning on. You can also control this instead of by count, by length. You can choose the length in which we're cloning here. So I can adjust that in centimeters or whatever unit of measurement you're using inside of Cinema 4D right now. You can also select a max count if you're working with length. So you can choose a max for the number of clones you will have made. And the offset still works for that. Now you can also choose your direction. What direction are we cloning in? Let's try positive X. Let's try negative X. Now this looks more like something you could put on a bookshelf, potentially. And I know that these look a little bit pixelated in here, but that's just because I'm working on saving memory in here. If I were to drop in a sun and sky, reduce the multiplier, a little bit intensity multiplier of the sun and sky, and hit start IPR. you'll see that these are able to render, and they do have a good amount of detail on them, these textures. So we're just saving memory in our viewport currently. But you can still go ahead and see that these are high resolution. So I'll go ahead and turn off the Redshift IPR. I'll go ahead and turn off the Redshift Sun and Sky here for a moment. And let's go through the other settings for our stack distribution. So you can see that you can flip around the direction in here using these buttons. You can also adjust the gap between these with this gap. So if you want there to be some separation in here. And by the way, all of these settings that you can see here with the diamond by them, that means that they are keyframeable. So if I hit this diamond here and move on ahead to the end and switch this back to 0, you'll actually see this animate. So I'll keyframe this again here and I'll press play. So you can see that all of these are able to also be implemented into an animation. I'm going to go ahead and delete those there. Change our gap back to 0. Let's discuss this aim along. So you can choose what direction you're aiming this along. Match direction will match the direction of your axis on your model. You can choose X. You can choose Y. You can choose Z. And you can get an idea of what these look like here. And it'll line these books up according to those directions. You can also flip their orientation. You can choose to have them facing forward, backward, or a combination of both, forward and backward. You have this option called spin. Auto is what it's set to right now. But we have the ability to choose something else. You can choose opposites. You can choose random. And this may be easier to see on the X. So at auto, and if we change this to forward, I'll actually choose match direction. So now all the books are facing towards us. If I just auto to opposites, you'll see that some of these flip around and some of these don't. But it's a nice way to add variety to your clones if you want that sense of randomness. You can also choose something like random. And you'll notice that these are not all orientating the same way. You can see this book's upside down, this book is sideways. So it just adds a little bit more variety to the books on the shelf, or you could use this for any other 3D model. So I'm just using books as an example, but the sky's the limit on what you can do here. Right now we have a scaling axis of uniform, and that means if I scale this up, they all scale up together uniformly. I'll reduce this to 0 for right now. I'm actually going to set this back to auto. So you can scale these uniformly. You also have the option to scale them by direction. So now you can see that we are scaling them along the X. Along the direction they are cloning. I'm going to take this back down to 0. And set this back to uniform. I'm going to set that back to -x. We have this option pivot. So as I increase this, you can see that we are basically translating the location of our cloner relative to its starting point from the left and to the right. We can do the same with the Y direction. You can see how that kind of shifts everything down. And you can also go by the Z direction. So let's say I'll set these back to the default for right now. So let's give an example for this. Maybe I want these all to stack this way, but I don't want them to be lined up like that. We can adjust this pivot. If we want them to all line up straight on the side. So that can be a useful tool. You can also adjust your seed. And this comes into play more so if you use something other than iterate. If we use random and you adjust the seed, you'll begin to see different options of how these can be randomly positioned. So if you have a lot of bookshelves you need to fill and you don't want them to all look identical, this seed can really help you hide the fact that they are being cloned and add a little bit more of that randomness that you'd see in real life. I want to show the color on something that hasn't been UV wrapped, like these books here. We actually UV wrapped these in another video, and I'll leave that in the description. But let's go ahead and just add in a primitive, like a cube here. I'm going to adjust its size a little bit. Something like this. Now let's go ahead and drop this cube into a cloner. As before, I'll switch the cloner from basic to advanced. I'll browse for a stack distribution. Make sure that I clicked on that. There we go. Took a minute to load, but now we see. Move this over. So right now you can see our stack distribution. So this is our cube being cloned right now with that. But you'll notice that now we see these colors. So before, textures were overriding this. But if you click on your stack distribution here, and by the way, I'm going to name these so that I know which stack distribution is what. Now you can see in our cloner, our distribution is now called stack distribution 1. This is stack distribution 1. So that means if we adjust the colors in here, it'll adjust this. So you can adjust the colors that are appearing in your scene. You can create different gradients. I can delete these knots on here to create a new type of gradient. I can add in new ones by clicking, and then you can adjust the color accordingly in here. You can choose the interpolation between the gradients. You could try smooth, a cubic curve, cubic bias, linear, step, or blend. You can try out all of these and see how they look. You can also adjust your knot position here, as well as your bias. So you can do that by adjusting these values in here. If you want to adjust your knot position, you can also drag and drop this here. If you pull these away, they disappear. You can choose constant and just choose a constant color. You can also choose random, and that will randomize the colors, the different colored knots you have, randomize them along the length of this. But I just really want to show you different ways in which you can use this tool. This color is a little bit different in the sense where if you want to actually apply this to a texture, I'll show you how to do that inside of Redshift. But basically, this is color data. So it's not an actual classical material like what we're used to working with. So I'll go into my materials. I'll choose an open PBR for right now. Double click on that. I want to find a color data. Color user data. So I'll drop this in here. And I'll plug the out into the color. And I'll add this to our cloner. So now initially this may appear it's just showing up black in our scene, but this is very fixable. So when you double click on your material and this window opens, you can click on your color data, and under your presets, you want to choose MoGraph because the cloner is a MoGraph object. That's what they call it inside of Cinema 4D. And then we want to choose color. So now as soon as we do that, you'll see that now we're able to see the colors being grabbed from our stack distribution. So that's the way you can translate your color data into an actual material inside of here. If you'd like additional learning resources, you can check out my website, ambient3danimations.com. I offer one-on-one coaching as well as Q&A sessions that are live. So if you need help with something in particular, we can discuss it there. See you here next time.